I'd like to welcome everybody and thank you all for attending today's 16th anniversary 9/11 Remembrance service. To start the service, I would like to have firefighter Christopher Jones ring the bell 4 rounds of 5, signifying the last alarm for those who didn't return home from Manhattan Box 558087, the World Trade Center, followed by the raising and lowering of the flags to half-staff by Lieutenant Eric Tynan, firefighters Chris Ferrara, Alexander Began, and Matt Butler. At this time, I would like to ask for a moment of silence in memory of those lost on 9/11. Thank you. Would our chaplain, Reverend Hinckley, pastor of the Trinitarian Church, please come up and lead us in an opening prayer?
Let us pause and give thanks and in remembrance for the people that responded, to those who still mourn, and that we never forget. So let us pray. God of us all, we gather here on this gorgeous morning simply to remember the sacrifice of men and women for the police and the firefighters who ran into the buildings. To help others so that they may have left those buildings to return to families, but we remember those who did not leave the rubble, those who gave the ultimate sacrifice. So as we gather here, let us never forget their acts of courage and of compassion and of hope and of mercy. Let us remember that you, O God, were in the stairwells, that you were in the burning buildings, that you were there. So as we honor their memories, their sacrifices, may we respond in kind to the societies in which we live and belong, to give of ourselves, to show acts of mercy. Let us also remember those first responders in Florida and in Texas for what they are doing and how they are helping. Let us never forget. Let us support. Let us lift them up in prayer, now and forevermore. In your holy name we pray. Amen.
It's certainly hard to believe that it's been 16 years since that horrific day. While we always see and hear the figure 343 representing those lost on that fateful day, sadly, the number of deaths to public safety personnel as a result of the attacks continues to rise, as many of the responders to the tower collapse site, who spent days working the pile, were exposed to unknown chemicals and toxins. Many are suffering from severe lung impairments. Officially, as of last September, the New York Fire Department has added 127 names to the ever-growing list of those from their department who have died of 9/11 related illnesses. They also list over 5,000 first responders, 9/11 first responders who have been diagnosed with World Trade Center linked cancer. For these families, they still live with the reality that is 911 every day. This is why, while many towns have cut back with the annual 911 remembrance ceremonies, in keeping with the "we must never forget" saying, I plan to continue to conduct this small ceremony for the foreseeable future. At this time, I would ask that firefighter Joshua George step forward and recite the firefighter's prayer.
The firefighter's prayer. When I am called to duty, where flames may rage, give me the strength to save a life, whatever be its age. Help me embrace a little child before it is too late, or save an older person from the horror of that fate. Enable me to be alert, hear the weakest show, and quickly and efficiently put the fire out. I want to fill my calling and to give the best in me to guard every neighbor and protect his property. And if according to God's will I must answer death's call, bless with your protecting hand my family, one and all. Amen.
I'd like to call forward, representing the Norton Board of Selectmen, Chairman Bob Kimball.
Good morning. It is tough to believe it's been 16 years since this all occurred. I was chairman of the board back in '01 when this all happened, and remember the gathering at the Common and the spirit of the community and how much support we offered, not only to our own personnel but also to the folks that had lost their lives at in New York City. The main point of the issue is as many as the public officials, the public safety officials we lost, major sacrifices they made. We can't go away not remembering all the heroes that were created that day among us, and the amount of people that actually made the ultimate sacrifice trying to help others that really was beyond their realm. So, as much as we want to recognize everything that did occur, we do recognize the fact that many private citizens took the action that day. There's a couple of meetings, they talk about the boats that came across the river to pick people up and get people out of there. There's a lot of different stories that happened that day. We all have our own. I'm sure we all remember where we were. I still have that same pit in my stomach I had 16 years ago just thinking about this. But I think most of all, we have to recognize the many, many heroes, the police, fire, that made the ultimate sacrifice. And as the Chief said, still today have that same issue. So on behalf of the Board of Selectmen, we want to thank the police and fire for everything they do for us here in Norton, and recognize that and thank everyone out there that had anything to do with or does anything for the town to make us the best town in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So thank you all for coming. It's appreciate you all coming out, and I'll get back to the Chief. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kimball. Just like to take a second to recognize our brothers in blue, Chief Clark, Chief Santiago. Thank you for showing up in force here this morning as well to remember those of you lost on our side as well. At this time, I would like to recognize the Wheaton College President, President Dennis Handel, for a few words. And publicly thank you for getting my daughter home safe.
Thank you, Chief. Sometimes when you live on a college campus, you feel isolated or insulated or protected from what's going on in the rest of the world. But certainly 9/11 was a day that I remembered vividly on a college campus where everyone realized that we're not separate and that we're not isolated. And I know from even talking to people here in Norton and at Wheaton in 2001, the communities came together to support each other. What I'm extremely thankful for and what this day reminds me is how fortunate we all are, but certainly in my role as a college president, to have people who are willing to give the extreme sacrifice that many have and many did on 9/11. And even here in town, whenever there's a crisis, I think we all realize that those first responders will be there for all of us. And seeing what's happening in Texas and in Florida reminds us every single day of the importance of the work that first responders do. So on behalf of the college community and thinking about how great it is to be citizens and residents of this incredible town, I thank the Chief and the police department and our own public safety for all that they do to keep us safe and secure and for the way they work together to make us all feel important and protected. I join you in recognizing this day as one where we can all reflect on those liberties that we enjoy because of the work of those first responders. So thank you for this opportunity to share a few words with you.
Thank you, President Handel. At this time, I'd like to recognize the Assistant Superintendent of the schools, Jennifer O'Neill, and ask her to come forward and say a few words, please.
Good morning. First of all, I'd like to thank the Chief Schleicher, for including the schools in this beautiful ceremony of remembrance this morning. 16 years ago, I was student teaching at the Salmonese School here in Norton in a first grade classroom. And as educators, our biggest job that day was to make the day as normal as possible for our students, because it was very scary for them, and they were very, very young at that time. Those students have grown, and many are still here in our community, others have left and moved on, but our job is still the same every day, is to make sure that our students come to school feeling safe and educating them in a world that's now very different from the one that we were in 16 years ago. And we are able to do that in partnership with our public safety, our Chief Schleicher and Chief Clark, and the forces here in Norton, and we are very honored to have them as our partners here in town. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. At this time, I'd like to call upon our state representatives, Jay Barrows and State Representative Stephen Howard, to come up and say a few words.
Good morning, and thank you, Chief. It's so special that we're here this morning. I want to thank everyone for coming for this remembrance. We talk about where we were and the thoughts 16 years ago. The thing that stood out in my mind the most was the lack of air transportation. If you remember, the president closed out all the airports for 2 or 3 days. And where I happen to live, there is a lot of times the planes fly over making their descent to the Providence airport. And it was just so strange. The only planes I remember seeing were F-14 or F-15 fighters flying from, I guess, Hanscom or one of the air bases surrounding the area. And it was ironic that the flights originated out of Boston, which brought it even more closer to us, as I remember. But the one thing I would just like to point out is that if any of you fly and you get very frustrated, think of how your life has changed because 9/11, when you have to go through all these things, your luggage, and it continually changes because as much as we try to be as safe as possible for our transportation and for terrorism, they seem to always are looking to take away what we have, which is our freedoms. So again, we have to be vigilant, we have to remember, and again, I appreciate it, Chief, and the town of Norton for allowing me to speak. Thank you. Jake?
Thank you and good morning. I can't really fathom how fast 16 years has gone by and how we still feel as strongly today as we did 16 years ago about this event that occurred. It was really an attempt to destroy our country and our freedoms, and we have had the resolve and the ability to come together and work together. One of the things as a result of 9/11, I think in our communities of sharing resources, soon we're going to have a 911 dispatch regional center. It'll include Norton, Mansfield, Foxborough, and Easton. Step in the right direction to allow our first responders to communicate efficiently and effectively and to serve all of our communities. But I want to thank the first responders. There were so many men and women that were lost that day, and they did make the ultimate sacrifice, but for the greater good. And it's nice to see our community come together. And Chief, I appreciate your willingness to continue to do this, because not many are, that we never forget. So thank you, and God bless everybody.
Thank you. So we conclude today's service with, again, the ringing of the bell, 4 rounds of 5. Here today, and I want to thank you all for taking time out of your busy lives to spend a few minutes here to reflect on the events of 9/11. I invite you all now to step inside the station and enjoy some coffee and pastries. Thank you.
Thank you.